slavery. Chattel slavery itself wasn't invented in 1441. That's something else we have to blame Rome and Greece for. Chattel slavery goes all the way back to Greece, where 25 to 50% of the people who lived in Greece were slaves. Aristotle defined a slave as a tool that talks. Roman civil government defined people into two classes, slave and free. The definition for a free man was not a slave. This is Roman civil law, slavery. This is an institution developed by what they say was their high culture, their high society, the Greeks. We don't have any history of chattel slavery nowhere in Africa. They say there was African slavery in Africa. There was some bondage in Africa, and people who was held captivity in Africa, as in North America and South America, was many times treated as union members of the group or the nation to which they were members. If you remember the story of Joseph from the Bible, Joseph supposedly was a slave, but this does not stop Joseph rise within the ranks of power. The chief priest of Kemet gave him his daughter in marriage. He became the number 2 man in the government of Kemet. This never happened in American slavery. In American slavery, a slave was at the bottom. It was a caste system. Slavery became, he was like an untouchable. He was like a non-person. He was a non-human being. This was not the case in Africa. This was not the case in North America. This was something new. This was the great evil that came out of the North. It began for us in 1441 with Prince Henry, the navigator, and the Portuguese slave trade on the west coast of Africa.
Okay. So what we like to do now, as we see all of this information that's been transpiring, the first actual act was an act of war, was invasion. Okay, we were invaded by Europeans seeking to save themselves. We were attacked. So let's see, can we go to some more video documentation actually showing the war on African people. Okay, here we have the war. This is an attack. This is war. This comes before captivity. Okay, and what we must understand that in the beginning, these Africans were not there to sell anybody. Okay, when Europeans sat down and decided to enslave Africans, when Pope Pius gave one half of the world to Portugal and the other half to Spain, when Prince Henry the Navigator decided to trade in captive Africans, when Bishop Bartholomew de las Casas got involved, Cristobal Colon, all of these Europeans, Africans were not there. So we must understand that the first act to occur was war. Okay? Now we must understand what took place and how our people became subject and dominated by the Europeans and Arabs and Jews and all of the other, so many were involved. See, this is not a one-sided thing, and that's why we're trying to go after as many participants as we can. See, we're not leaving anybody out. We're going to expose them all tonight.
And Brother Tehuti, we'd like to take a look at what was the effect of this great evil from the north coming into Africa. What condition have they left Africa in? Today, when we go and look at the African nations, we find that many small African nations that exist when the Europeans came there are today extinct. If we go look in the Caribbean, all the islands that we now know as Haiti, Cuba, Puerto Rico, Trinidad, Jamaica, these places were not vacant. They were all settled. But today, the Caribbean Amerindians are extinct. You can't find one. If you look in North America today, you'd be lucky, as Brother Oscar would say, to find 2 million Native Americans. But there were 30 million when the Europeans got here. If you look at the number of Africans that died in the Maafa, you have over 100 million. If you look at the number of people who died in North America, Central America, Caribbean America, and South America. Here again, the Europeans are responsible for the murder and death of over 100 million people. We're not talking about the Jewish Holocaust tonight. We're talking about the Maafa. We're talking about things unprecedented in the history of this planet. All of this was done under the Christian banner. All of this was done in the name of God. All of this was done what they call manifest destiny. Their goal to rule the planet at any cost. Many people no longer exist.
Now, Dr.Fred, I have another picture here that shows the aftermath of a war and how our people's heads were chopped off and bodies dismembered and just laying all over the place and left there. See, these are the kind of attacks, and these are the kind of psychological, on a subconscious level, the fear that was embedded on our people still exists. Many of our people are afraid of white people today and really don't understand exactly where the fear is coming from. But it's these kind of horrible atrocities, okay, that our genetic subconscious experienced that's still present with us today. I meet a lot of brothers and sisters, you know, that's just outright afraid of white folks, afraid to even mention their name. When we go out talking about reparations, you know, they'd rather us to use all kind of old abstract terms, you know, the Klan or the man downtown. But we have to name these Europeans and name these white folks and these Jews and these white women and these Arabs that caused the Maafa, genocide on African people. And this is genocide, brothers and sisters. Look, heads are dismembered from the bodies. And these are the kind of atrocities that African people went through on a daily basis for over 500 years. Bubba?
I think the other thing we have to remember when we talk about the African Holocaust is that we're not talking ancient history. The African Holocaust continues today. Today, we have, I would say we have probably several hundred people murdered annually in this country, the land of the home of the brave and the land of the free, by the Klan, the new Klan, the police, the largest gang in America, who shoot Africans down on sight, unarmed, with no repercussions. This year along in Tennessee, 2 young African-American males in Memphis have been murdered by the police. In Nashville, this year, 3 young men have been murdered by the police, unarmed. 2 Africans, 1 Asian. Nowhere do you see in the paper a European male or female, unarmed, gunned down by the police.
Okay, let's see, can we get the lines working now? Let's try and take a call. Hotep, caller?
Yes, hello, how's it going?
Hotep.
All right, I want to ask a question. As an African-American in America, and I've learned some stuff about the King James Version. It's been changed. You know, a lot of books have been taken out.
Yes, sir.
What are we, you know, what am I supposed to go by, you know, because I want the truth. You know, I want the truth, like, for me and my family and my children.
Okay.
Because, you know, I've just learned something else about King James, how he was part of the slaves.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, and I don't want to go and read nothing under him, King James Version. You know, I don't want to go through none of that, because is that God's word? You know, I don't think it is. That's why I'm asking a question. What am I supposed to read and go by as a black man?
Okay, we'll see if we can answer that.
Thanks very much.
Asante.
Okay.
Dr.Fred?
I think divine inspiration never came to the white man. Divine inspiration came through Africa 4,000 years before white people began to write. The ancient doctrine of salvation, heaven, resurrection is an old African concept that came out of Kemet, what the Greeks called Egypt. If you go back and look at some of the ancient